I used to think the worst kind of pain was losing someone you loved. But I was wrong. The worst pain is realizing that someone you love never really belonged to you in the first place. Not the way you thought, not in the way that mattered. I remember the day like it was yesterday. I had just gotten home from work, the kind of long day that leaves you grateful for a quiet dinner and the sound of your kids' laughter echoing down the hall. But when I stepped inside, my wife, Amy, was sitting at the kitchen table, pale, hands trembling around a mug of untouched tea. The kind of stillness that doesn't belong in a family home. I knew something was wrong before she opened her mouth. And when she finally did, everything I thought I knew about my life shattered into pieces I've never quite been able to pick back up. It didn't come out in some screaming fight or a dramatic confession. No, Amy was always more insidious than that. Calculated, quiet, measured in how she delivered destruction. She looked at me with those tired eyes and said, "We need to talk about Lily." Just like that. Like she was asking to rearrange the living room furniture. I sat down slowly, confused, my stomach already tightening, because no good sentence starts like that. She told me, after 16 years of marriage, after raising Lily together from the moment she was born, that Lily might not be mine. Might was the word she used. Might. As if there was any comfort in ambiguity. As if that softened the betrayal. There was a guy, some one-night mistake during a rough patch she never told me about. And she had never taken a test. Never felt the need. Until recently, when curiosity, or guilt, or whatever rotted conscience she had left, got the better of her. I remember sitting there, staring at her, unable to speak. The sounds around me felt muffled, like I'd been thrown underwater. Lily's voice drifted from the living room, singing off-key to some ridiculous pop song, completely oblivious to the bomb that had just gone off in our kitchen. And all I could think was, she's mine. I raised her. I bandaged her knees. I braided her hair on picture day when Amy forgot. I taught her how to ride a bike, how to swim, how to tell when someone's lying. And yet, somehow, none of that counted now. Not in the eyes of biology. Not in the eyes of a woman who could sit across from me and drop a truth like that without so much as a tear. The days that followed were a blur. I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw baby Lily in my arms for the first time, her fingers curling around mine. I heard her little voice calling me, "Daddy," with that unshakable trust only children have. And then I'd hear Amy's voice again, calmly explaining that she had taken a DNA test without my knowledge. That she had confirmed it. Lily wasn't mine. Not biologically. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I think that surprised her. I just got up, walked out the front door, and sat in my car for almost an hour. Just breathing. Just trying to understand how a lie that big could live in our house for almost 2 decades without me ever noticing its shadow. I thought about leaving. Of course I did. There's something in a man that breaks when his family turns out to be a carefully curated illusion. I imagined packing my bags, taking my name off the mortgage, finding a shitty one-bedroom somewhere, and starting over. But every time I pictured it, I saw Lily's face. The way she used to jump into my arms when I came home from work. The way she clung to me during thunderstorms. The way she cried when I missed her 6th grade play because of a flat tire. None of that was fake. None of that was pretend. And I realized something that day, something no DNA test could erase. I was her father. In every way that counted. I had shown up, day after day, year after year. I had given her everything I had, without hesitation, without resentment. And I wasn't going to stop. Not because Amy had betrayed me, not because the bloodline wasn't mine, but because she was. Amy didn't fight me on it. She looked almost relieved, like she'd expected me to rage, to burn it all down. But I didn't. I just told her I needed time. That I would never forgive her. Not for the cheating, not for the lie, but that my love for Lily was untouched. I made it clear I wouldn't tell Lily anything yet. Not until she was old enough. Not until she came to me herself with questions. Because even though Amy had detonated our marriage, Lily was innocent. And she deserved to grow up in a home where at least one parent's love was constant. I slept on the couch for a while. We moved through the house like ghosts, avoiding eye contact, avoiding everything. But I still made her breakfast, still helped with her homework, still drove her to piano practice every Thursday like clockwork. There was a kind of strange peace in those years. I knew the truth, and so did Amy, but Lily didn't. And every time she hugged me or laughed with me or called me dad, it stitched a little piece of my heart back together. I convinced myself that love was stronger than truth, that if I just kept showing up, nothing else would matter. I never thought about the future, never thought about what would happen when she turned 18 and started asking real questions, because I couldn't let myself go there. All I had was the present. All I had was her love and the fragile hope that it would survive the truth when it finally came to light. You'd think, after what Amy told me, I'd have pulled back somehow. Maybe not all at once, but just enough to protect myself, like instinctively recoiling from a flame after being burned. But I didn't. If anything, I clung tighter to Lily in those final teenage years, like part of me was terrified that if I loosened my grip even slightly, the universe would come and rip her away from me for good. There's something about parenting under the shadow of a secret that makes every moment feel sharper, more fragile. I noticed things I hadn't before. Her laugh, the way her nose crinkled when she was deep in thought, the way she'd rest her head on my shoulder while we watched movies. I found myself cataloging these moments, hoarding them like proof that I'd been enough for her, that I was enough. And in those years, she never gave me a reason to doubt that. Lily was my shadow. She took to me more than she ever did to Amy, especially once she hit her teen years and started having those inevitable mother-daughter blowouts over makeup, curfews, and school. She always came to me to vent, to cry, to just sit in silence while I cooked dinner or fixed something around the house. I remember one night, she got into a huge fight with Amy about some boy she wasn't supposed to be talking to. She slammed her bedroom door, locked herself in, and refused to come out for hours. When she finally did, her eyes were red, her voice was soft, and she walked straight past Amy and into my arms. "I hate her sometimes," she whispered, her face buried in my chest. "But you always get me." And I just held her, heart full and aching all at once, wondering how the hell someone could carry a lie like Amy had and still look her child in the eye every day. That kind of bond doesn't just form. It's built, moment by moment, through scraped knees and sleepless nights, late-night talks and quiet car rides. I helped her study for her SATs, quizzed her on vocabulary words while she sat cross-legged on the couch in one of my old sweatshirts. I drove her to every dance recital, every soccer game, every awkward birthday party where she didn't know half the kids. I sat through hours of school plays where she had 3 lines, but shone brighter in my eyes than any lead ever could. On her 16th birthday, she hugged me so hard she nearly knocked the wind out of me and whispered, "You're the best dad in the world." And maybe I was foolish, maybe I was naive, but I believed her. I let myself believe that nothing, not blood, not secrets, not even Amy's betrayal, could undo the life we'd built together. Still, the truth hovered, always, like a storm cloud in the distance, just waiting for the right wind to bring it crashing overhead. Sometimes, I'd find myself staring at her across the dinner table, seeing traces of a stranger in her face. She had my eyes, or so I thought, but now I wasn't sure. She had a different way of tilting her head when she was confused, a different gait, a laugh that didn't match mine or Amy's. I told myself it was nothing, that plenty of biological parents have kids who look nothing like them. But late at night, in the quiet dark when she was asleep and the house had settled, I'd lie awake wondering if I was just a placeholder, if all these years were borrowed time. And still, I kept quiet. Still, I loved her with everything I had. Senior year came fast and furious. College applications, prom dress shopping, last-minute panic about what to do with her life. We did it all together. I was the one helping her compare scholarships and write personal statements, while Amy hovered on the periphery, trying to be more present than she'd ever been, but never quite succeeding. Lily was bright, focused, a little stubborn, but beautifully idealistic. She wanted to major in environmental science, maybe move to Oregon or Washington, somewhere with trees and clean air and people who cared about the planet. I was proud, so damn proud, and terrified of the moment she'd leave. I knew it was coming, but no part of me felt prepared. I had raised her. She was the best thing I'd ever done. And I knew that when she left, the house would feel like a mausoleum. She turned 18 that spring. We threw a party, small, just family and a few close friends. She wore this pale blue dress that made her look older than she was, and for a second, I saw the woman she was becoming instead of the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders. Amy, ever the planner, made a slideshow of Lily's childhood photos, first steps, kindergarten graduation, Halloween costumes. And in every picture, I was there, smiling, holding her, kissing her forehead. I saw it reflected on Lily's face as she watched, the way her eyes softened, the way she laughed at the memory of her second-grade science fair project where I'd helped her build a volcano that exploded all over the gym floor. "You've always been there," she said later that night when we were cleaning up. "Always." And I nodded, fighting the urge to say, "I hope that always still means something when you find out the truth." Because I knew it was coming. She was legal now. Amy had told me she wasn't going to hide it from her anymore, that Lily deserved to know where she came from. I couldn't argue, not logically, but emotionally. I wanted to scream. I wanted to yank the words right out of Amy's mouth before they could ever reach Lily's ears. Because the truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it destroys you. And I knew that no matter how much Lily loved me, once the biological father entered the picture, everything would change. And it did. I never thought it would happen so fast. One day, Lily was mine, laughing in our kitchen, stealing bites of my cereal like she had since she was 5. And then suddenly, there was a stranger in the mix. A shadow from the past stepping into the light. Amy didn't give me a heads up. Of course not. She told Lily everything behind my back, like it was just another secret to keep from me. Another decision made without my consent in a household I had kept standing on my back for nearly 2 decades. One night, I came home from work, and Lily was waiting at the table, quiet, tense, eyes red. I thought maybe she was upset about school or a fight with a friend. But when I asked what was wrong, she didn't look at me. She looked through me. "Why didn't you ever tell me he existed?" she asked, and I swear, I felt something inside me cave in on itself. I didn't have an answer. Not one she wanted to hear, anyway. I could have said, because I wasn't the one who lied. I could have said, because I didn't want to lose you. But none of that would have mattered, not in that moment. Amy had told her. She had told her everything. About the affair, about the DNA test, about the man who was technically her real father. And Lily, my Lily, had latched onto the idea like a lifeline. She wanted to meet him, wanted to know who she really was. I stood there like a ghost, watching the foundation of my world shift beneath my feet. All I could do was nod and say, "Okay," even though every part of me was screaming no. The day she met him, I didn't know what to do with myself. I stayed home from work, pacing the living room like a caged animal. I kept checking the clock, picturing every possible scenario, what he might say, how he might act, whether he'd try to play hero or start picking apart the life I had built with her. He had never paid a cent, never made a phone call, never sent a birthday card. But now, when everything was already built, he got to show up and claim her? I felt sick. I felt helpless. And when she came back that night, eyes wide, voice light, cheeks flushed from the excitement, I knew I had already lost. She talked about him like he was some kind of legend. He's successful, owns his own business, travels all over. He said he always wondered about me. I sat there on the couch, nodding, my throat burning. She was looking at him with brand new eyes, seeing only the shine and none of the rust. Of course he seemed perfect. He hadn't been there for the hard parts. He hadn't walked the floors with her when she had the flu or cried in the emergency room when she broke her arm. He hadn't scraped together savings to buy her a used car for her 16th birthday or worked overtime to help pay for college applications. But none of that mattered now, because she had new eyes, and I was part of an old story she didn't want to read anymore. The distance grew quickly after that. She stopped telling me things, stopped coming home for dinner. She was always with him, her real dad. That word tore into me every time she said it. Real. As if the years I'd given her were counterfeit. As if the love I poured into her was some placeholder until the real thing came along. I tried not to let it show. I still smiled when she walked in the door, still asked how her day was, still offered to help with whatever she needed. But she didn't look at me the same. I was a memory, a background character in a new chapter of her life. And then, 2 months after her first meeting with him, the final blow landed in my inbox like a gut punch I didn't see coming. It was a message, short, clinical, like she was writing a business memo instead of speaking to the man who raised her. I've decided to take some time to explore this new relationship and figure out who I really am. I appreciate everything you've done, but I need space. Please don't contact me. No call. No face-to-face. Just that. After 18 years of being her everything, she reduced me to a footnote in her self-discovery. I read the message again and again, each time hoping it would hurt less. It never did. I didn't reply. I couldn't. What was I supposed to say? Don't forget who held you when you had night terrors? Don't forget who you cried to when your first boyfriend broke your heart? No. She had made her choice. So I honored it. I didn't fight. I didn't beg. I just disappeared. The silence that followed was worse than death. At least when someone dies, you're allowed to grieve. You get flowers, casseroles, sympathy cards. But when your child walks away from you like you were just a stopgap, nobody knows what to say. People asked how she was, and I'd smile and say, off living her life. I never mentioned that I hadn't heard her voice in months, that I checked my phone every morning like a fool, hoping for a message that never came. Amy tried to talk to me about it once. She said Lily was just figuring things out, that it was normal for kids to pull away. But I saw the guilt in her eyes. She knew this wasn't normal. She knew this was her doing. But I didn't have the energy to hate her anymore. I didn't have the energy for anything. So I moved on, slowly, painfully. I got a dog, started going on long walks, picked up a few hobbies, nothing fancy, just something to fill the hours she used to occupy. I told myself I'd be okay, that maybe one day she'd come back and we'd have some kind of conversation that stitched a few things back together. Not a full repair. No, the break was too deep for that. But something. A thread. A bridge. But that day never came. Not for a long time. And when it finally did, it wasn't because she missed me. It wasn't because she realized what I had been to her. It was because he had failed her. And suddenly, the man who had been disposable became necessary again. The silence settled into my life like dust on old furniture, unnoticed at first, then suddenly thick, undeniable, coating every part of me. After Lily's message, I didn't hear from her again. No holidays. No birthdays. Not even a vague, obligatory check-in. Just nothing. It was like she had scrubbed me from her life, wiped our history clean like a chalkboard, and started writing a new story that I didn't belong in. And as much as it gutted me, I let her. I told myself I had no right to interfere with her choices, even if they were carving me open from the inside. So I lived inside that silence, made a home in it. I learned how to function with a hollow spot where she used to be. Those 2 years changed me. At first, I kept hoping. Every time the phone buzzed, a part of me thought maybe, it was her. Even just a text, hey, how are you, would have been enough to send me reeling. But the days stretched into weeks, the weeks into months, and the hope faded like a bruise. I stopped bringing her name up in conversation. I stopped checking her social media, stopped asking mutual friends if they'd heard anything. It felt like self-harm to keep looking. I had to detach, like emotionally amputating a limb that had turned gangrenous. Because the truth was, she had made it clear, she didn't want me. Not in her past, and definitely not in her future. There was a part of me, one I hate admitting existed, that wanted her to fail. Not because I didn't love her. God, I loved her. But because some bitter, broken corner of my soul needed her to see what she had thrown away. I wanted her to learn that the man she ran to wasn't the man she thought he was. I wanted her to wake up one day, look around, and realize the foundation he gave her was built on air. I pictured her calling me in tears, apologizing, saying she had made a mistake. And then I'd be there, arms open, ready to forgive. But even in those fantasies, I knew it was a lie. That kind of hurt doesn't go away. You don't just move on from being discarded like yesterday's news. Forgiveness might come, sure, but trust? That never fully grows back. It was around the start of the second year that I started seeing someone new. Melissa. She was kind, patient, not nosy. We met at a cooking class I forced myself to attend just to get out of the house. She made me laugh again, which felt foreign at first, like wearing shoes that didn't quite fit. But it was good, comfortable. She knew I had a daughter, but I never gave details. Just said she was grown, living her own life. Melissa never pried. And that's what I needed, someone who didn't poke at the wound, Someone who didn't ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. For the first time in years, I felt something like peace. Then one evening, while Melissa and I were cleaning up after dinner, my phone buzzed. I wouldn't have checked it right away, but something in the tone of the notification, a name I hadn't seen in what felt like a lifetime, made me stop mid-sentence. It was Lily. After 2 years of silence, she had sent me a message. It wasn't long, not at first. Just one line. "Can we talk? I need your help." My heart stopped. My body reacted before my mind did. I sat down hard at the kitchen table, my hands shaking. Melissa noticed, asked what was wrong. I told her, finally, everything. The betrayal, the message, the long, empty stretch between then and now. She didn't say much, just rubbed my shoulder and left me alone with the decision. I didn't answer her that night, or the next. Instead, I sat with it, letting all the old memories flood back. Her message opened the door to everything I had buried. The nights I cried alone, the holidays I spent pretending not to notice her absence, the bitterness I swallowed just to get through each day. And now she wanted to talk, because she needed something. Not because she missed me, not because she wanted to reconnect, but because her biological father, the man she chose over me, had somehow let her down. And suddenly, I wasn't so disposable anymore. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I didn't respond to her, but I looked her up. Her social media had gone quiet, but I found bits and pieces. She had moved out on her own and tried to start a business, something her biological father had apparently funded. From what I gathered, it had all collapsed. There were rumors he used her name to open accounts, rack up debt. She had taken out a loan for him, and when he defaulted, she was the one left holding the bag. I should have felt bad. I should have wanted to rescue her. But all I felt was a dull, tired ache. Like watching someone drown after they swam away from your life raft. A few days later, she messaged again. This time longer, more desperate. She said she was in trouble, serious financial trouble. She needed help. She said she didn't know where else to turn. That she was scared. That she made a mistake. I read it in silence, each word twisting deeper than the last. For a moment, I almost replied. Almost. But then I remembered her first message. The one that told me to stay away. The one that closed the door without even a goodbye. And suddenly, all the sympathy drained from me like air from a balloon. I didn't know her anything. Not anymore. So I blocked her. I sat there, looking at the message one last time. Then I pressed the button, severed the connection, and stared at the screen until it went dark. And then I got up, washed the dishes with Melissa, and went to bed. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just accepted it. That was the night I truly let her go, not with love, not with rage, but with silence. The same silence she had given me for 2 years. You don't realize how much someone took from you until they try to come back and ask for more. After I blocked Lily's messages, there was this strange stillness in me. Not peace, not exactly, but a kind of emotional quiet that felt foreign after years of chaos, grief, and second-guessing. It wasn't that I didn't care anymore. I did. I always would. But something inside me had finally closed the gate. Locked it. Welded it shut. And not out of bitterness, but out of survival. Because if I opened myself up to her again, after what she'd done, there wouldn't be anything left of me to protect. I wasn't angry in the explosive, loud way. It was quieter now, colder. A distant sort of clarity that let me finally see her as she was, not as I had wanted her to be. Word traveled, of course. These things always do. It didn't take long for Amy to find out. Whether Lily told her directly, or she pieced it together through the grapevine, I don't know. But one afternoon, while I was cleaning out the garage, she showed up. Just like old times. No call, no warning. I didn't even recognize the knock at first. When I opened the door and saw her standing there, arms crossed, face tight, I felt that old resentment stirring in my gut like an ember catching flame. I hadn't seen her in over a year. She looked tired, older, and for a moment, I almost asked if she was okay. But then she opened her mouth and reminded me exactly why we were no longer a family. "You really blocked her?" she asked. No greeting, no pleasantries. Just that. I nodded. Didn't know her more than that. But she kept going. "She's your daughter. She made a mistake. She was young. You don't just turn your back like that." I laughed. Actually laughed, because the irony was too much to bear. "You mean like she did?" I asked. Like you both did. Amy flinched, and for a second, she looked like she might cry. But she didn't. She straightened her back, held her ground. She needs help. You don't have to be her father, but you can at least be a decent human being. That was when I lost it. Quietly, but completely. I stepped out of the garage, closed the distance between us, and looked her dead in the eye. I was a decent human being when I stayed after you cheated. When I raised a child that wasn't mine. When I kept showing up day after day with no thanks, no recognition, just pure love. And when she turned 18, she tossed me aside like a worn-out coat. Don't come to my house and lecture me about decency. She didn't respond. Just stood there, swallowing hard, eyes flickering like she didn't know whether to lash out or apologize. I didn't wait for either. I turned and went back inside, shut the door, and locked it behind me. That confrontation shook something loose. Not guilt. No, I didn't feel guilt anymore. But it rattled the old memories, stirred up years of moments I'd buried deep. All the times I put Lily before myself. All the nights I stayed up worrying about how I'd afford her future. The sacrifices I made without question. And yet, in the end, none of it mattered. One charismatic man, one blood test, and it was like I never existed. And now, after everything fell apart, she expected me to become her safety net again. I wanted to scream. Where was that energy when I was sobbing into my steering wheel at midnight because you told me to stay away? But there was no point. That scream would only echo back at me. So I stayed silent. Friends started reaching out after that. People I hadn't heard from in ages. I guess Lily was telling her version of the story, painting herself as the lost daughter, trying to reconcile with the cold, unfeeling man who used to be her dad. One friend, Mark, who had known me since college, sent me a long message trying to bridge the gap. Said he understood my pain, but that kids push away the people they trust the most because they feel safest doing so. I didn't reply. What would be the point? No one could truly understand unless they'd stood exactly where I had, holding a child that felt like your own, only to be told you were nothing more than a placeholder when the truth showed up. I wasn't cold. I didn't wish her harm. I hoped she got through whatever mess she was in. I hoped she learned. But I also knew this was a line I couldn't uncross. If I helped her now, after being thrown away, I'd be teaching her that love doesn't need to be mutual, that loyalty is a one-way street. And I couldn't live with that lesson. Not for her. Not for me. Because in the end, the lesson she needed most was that actions have consequences. That you don't get to abandon someone, then come crawling back only when the person you chose over them lets you down. A few weeks later, I saw her by chance. Grocery store parking lot. She didn't see me at first. She looked thinner, exhausted. She was arguing with someone on the phone, her voice sharp, frantic. I didn't catch the words, but I caught the tone. It was panic. And for a brief second, my heart clenched. I almost stepped forward, almost called her name. But I didn't. I stood there behind the safety of my car, watching the daughter I once knew unravel in real time. And all I could feel was distance. Like I was watching a stranger with familiar eyes spiral through a life I was no longer part of. Eventually, she stormed off, and I sat in my car for a long time, just staring at the steering wheel. That night, Melissa noticed I was quiet. She asked if I wanted to talk. I shook my head. There wasn't anything left to say. Everything had already been said, or left unsaid, where it needed to be. I kissed her goodnight, turned off the lights, and lay in the dark with my hands behind my head, listening to the hum of the ceiling fan. I thought about Lily's first day of kindergarten, her first lost tooth, the time we danced in the kitchen to 80s music and laughed until our sides hurt. And I let those memories exist, not to torture me, not to make me second guess, but simply because they were real. She had been mine, and I had been hers. Once. But that time was gone, and I finally understood that not every door needs to stay open. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do, for yourself, is to keep it shut. It's strange how something can belong to you completely one day, then vanish into the space between memory and reality the next. I used to walk into Lily's room after she left for college and just stand there, touching the edges of her old life. Her posters still clung to the walls, some curling at the corners, faded from sun. Her childhood books lined the shelves, the spines creased from years of bedtime stories, most of which I could still recite from memory. There was even an old sweatshirt of mine tossed over her desk chair, the same one she used to steal on cold nights when she wanted to feel safe. But now, the room just felt like a museum, and I had become nothing more than the retired curator of a life no one visited anymore. There were mornings when I'd make 2 cups of coffee out of habit. One for me, one for her, just like I used to on weekends when we'd sit on the back porch, her with her mocha and me with plain black. We'd watch the sky change colors and talk about everything and nothing, her dreams, her stress, the shows we were watching. She told me once that I was her safe space, that no matter how loud the world got, I was her calm. That memory stayed with me, branded into the softest part of me, the part one thought would always belong to her. But those words, like so many others, lost their weight when she chose blood over love. When she decided that DNA meant more than the years we spent building a bond that felt unbreakable. I started therapy a few months after she cut me off. I didn't tell anyone, not even Melissa at first. I just knew I couldn't carry all of it anymore. The guilt, the confusion, the gnawing ache of being erased. My therapist, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a voice like warm tea, helped me name things I'd never named. She told me that what I went through was a kind of grief most people don't understand. She didn't die, I said in one session, trying to explain why I felt silly mourning someone still alive. But she left, the therapist replied. And that's a death of a different kind. She was right. It was the slow kind. The kind where the person still breathes, still walks the earth, but you don't get to touch their life anymore. You're locked out, peering through a glass wall, watching them live without you. There were times when I blamed myself. I wondered if I had loved her too much, made her too comfortable, too safe. Had I made her feel like I'd always be there no matter what, so she didn't think twice about walking away? Was I too passive when Amy confessed the truth? Should I have fought harder to protect my role, my identity as her father? These questions chased me in the dark, wrapping around my throat like hands made of smoke. But then I remembered how present I had been, how I'd never once made her feel like a burden, how I gave without asking for anything but respect in return. And I realized it wasn't me who failed. I showed up. I stayed. That was the whole story. One Sunday afternoon, I found a shoebox tucked away in the back of my closet. I'd forgotten it was there. Inside were photos, notes she had written me over the years, Father's Day cards, birthday doodles, stick figures of us holding hands under a crooked sun. I sat on the floor and went through them slowly, letting the ache wash over me without resistance. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't sad. I was, but because the tears had already come and gone so many times, there was nothing left. Just a hollow sort of acceptance. I whispered thank you to the photos, the notes, the little girl I once knew. Then I closed the box and slid it back, not to forget, but to honor. I didn't need to revisit it again. I had lived it. That was enough. Eventually, Melissa and I got married. A small ceremony, nothing flashy. Just close friends, good food, and genuine laughter. She never pushed me to include Lily. Never asked if I'd invite her. She knew, instinctively, that some doors are best left closed. At the reception, someone asked if I had kids. I paused for a breath longer than I should have, then answered, I did once. They looked confused, but didn't pry. And I was grateful. That's how I've learned to speak about Lily now, in past tense. Not to be cruel, not to erase her, but to protect myself. Because clinging to a relationship that no longer exists only prolongs the bleeding. I chose the scar. A few months after the wedding, I got another message. Not from her, but from a cousin of Amy's. She said Lily had been talking about me more lately, that she'd referred to me as the only real father she ever had, that maybe she was coming around. I stared at the message, feeling absolutely nothing. Not anger, not hope, just stillness. Because those words, sweet as they were, meant nothing if they weren't followed by action. And I had learned the hard way that apologies spoken through someone else's mouth weren't apologies at all. If Lily wanted to find her way back to me, she knew how. But this time, I wouldn't meet her halfway. I'd done that already. Now, the work had to come from her. Sometimes, I wonder what kind of man her biological father was, deep down. Not the one he presented to her at the start, but the one she saw in the end. The man who used her for money, betrayed her trust, and disappeared when things fell apart. Did she see a reflection of Amy in him? Did she finally understand what betrayal looks like when it wears a charming smile? I'll never know. That's not my burden to carry anymore. I carried it long enough. Lily was never mine to begin with. Not in the genetic sense. And eventually, not in the emotional sense either. But I loved her like she was. I gave her my best years, my best self, the deepest parts of me. And that matters, even if no one else remembers it. Even if she doesn't. I don't need to be her dad now to know that I was. And maybe that's the only closure I'll ever get. If you've ever given someone unconditional love and they still chose to walk away, you're not alone. I carried that pain in silence for years, until I realized the greatest act of love sometimes is letting go. If this story hit home, let me know in the comments. Would you have opened the door when she came back, or locked it like I did? And if you want more stories like this, raw, real, and unapologetically honest, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There's more where this came from. See you soon in the next one.